It's the Pillowcast with Lane McCullum. If you've got friends, you better call them. This podcast exists for absolutely no reason. Yeah. It's the only thing worse than federal treason.
Hello, all you pillow people. Welcome back to another episode of Pillowcast. We're going solo again this week. We had a movie review plan that we were going to do, but we're going to move that to next week, actually, because this is actually something that I've been wanting to do really since the start of the podcast. I had a bunch of ideas that I wanted to do for episodes, and this was one of the first ones that I came up with. I'm just getting around to it. I'm very excited to talk about it. It's going to be an interesting one because it's kind of breaking away from more of the traditional media that we usually talk about on here. Usually we talk about video games, movies, music, whatever else. But this time we're talking about something that every grown adult absolutely loves. Children's toys. Yeah, children's toys. Specifically, Star Wars. We're going to be talking about Star Wars today. I don't think I've talked about it very much on the podcast, but I love Star Wars. I've loved Star Wars since I was a kid. One of my favorite franchises just of all time. And specifically, one of my favorite things about Star Wars and relating to Star Wars is the original toy line that came out while the original trilogy movies were coming out, made by the toy company Kenner.
It's Darth Vader, watch out! And he's got a lightsaber.
It's Kenner's Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
I got you now, Ben Kenobi.
With R2-D2 and C-3PO. There's even Chewbacca and Han Solo.
Someone's coming, Chewie. Who's there? It's Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. Now I know the Force is with us.
Darth Vader, R2-D2, C-3PO, and other Kenner Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
The Kenner Star Wars line is just one of the most legendary lines in all of toy collecting, up there with the G.I. Joes and all of that shit. It's just one of the greatest toy lines ever made. And they're the original Star Wars toys. They came out as the movies came out. And they're just very legendary, and they were highly successful, and just learning about the toys and just finding them where I can has always been a passion of mine ever since I was a kid. Whenever my dad actually gave me his old childhood collection of Kenner Star Wars figures. And I had a good amount of them. He had a lot of great figures back in the day, when he was a kid, and ended up passing them down to me. Little me lost all the accessories for him, which was kind of unfortunate. But I still have all of them to this day, and I've even acquired some new ones in the years since. So I've never stopped loving the toy line and just learning everything I can about it. I think it's a very interesting line, and just the world of pop culture in general. It was very culturally significant at the time that the toys were coming out and being released. So just some background on the toy line itself. Pretty much everybody passed on the Star Wars toy license when the movie was about to come out, which is crazy to think about now, considering how much of a cultural phenomenon Star Wars is. But back then, it wasn't really a known thing. It was just the first movie. Even George Lucas didn't know if the movie was going to do well. So nobody really took them up on licensing deals when it came to merchandise and toys and stuff, until Kenner came around, and they bit the bullet and were like, fuck it, we're going to license Star Wars, we're going to do the toy line. And so the toy line started the same year that the original movie came out, Episode 4, A New Hope, in 1977. They didn't have the toys ready for the holiday season, so what they did was they sent you a piece of cardboard that had the first 4 figures on it, and it was called the Early Bird line. And these 4 figures were the original version of Luke Skywalker from Tatooine that you see in the opening scenes of A New Hope, Chewbacca, R2-D2, and Princess Leia, the white outfit Princess Leia, the Episode 4 one. Those were the Early Bird figures, and those were the ones that they rolled the line out with. And you would receive them however long after that early bird package came in the mail. And they would go on to do 4 lines, I guess, in the entire run of the Kenner Star Wars figures, from 1977 to about 1985. They did about 4 lines. So the first, they were based off of the original trilogy movies, with the first line being just Star Wars, because this was before George Lucas and Lucasfilm or whatever retroactively changed the movie's name to A New Hope, with just the Star Wars line. And then in 1980, we got the Empire Strikes Back line. Then around 1983, we got the Return of the Jedi line. And then after that, we got a 4th line, which is very notorious, infamous, whatever weird word you want to use to describe it in the collecting community, which is called Star Wars: The Power of the Force, which was the fourth line, which had a lot of the older figures in it, along with some new ones with collector coins. It was a fucking mess. It was pretty much just Kenner trying to milk the Star Wars name for as much money as they could, because the movies were over, at least for the time being. We didn't know if we were going to get any new movies after that, so they were kind of just milking the toy line, seeing how much money they could get out of it. It didn't really do anything for them money-wise. It was kind of a failure. They planned, actually, and this is something that a lot of people actually don't know, is that after Power of the Force, they were actually considering making up their own Star Wars lore and continuing the toy line after that. And it was kind of the very first example of, like, Star Wars expanded universe material. There's actually a lot of leaked stuff that's come out from those plans and that era of the Kenner Star Wars line. It's a very interesting rabbit hole, but only going to be talking about stuff that's released in this, unfortunately. But those are the four main lines. And whenever I talk about these toys, I'm going to be explaining what line they came from, whether it's Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, or Power of the Force. So yeah, now we're in the meat of it. Now you guys know what Kenner Star Wars is. So what we're going to be doing in this episode is I'm going to be talking about the best and the worst of the Kenner Star Wars figure line. I could do all the other stuff. I could talk about the play sets. I could talk about the vehicles. I could talk about all of that shit. But those honestly could be their own episodes. But I am just going to solely focus on the action figures. Mostly the 3 3/4 inch action figures that everyone grew up on. The best sellers of the entire line. They're kind of the main ingredient of the line. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. So, I have compiled a list, 2 separate lists actually, of what I personally believe to be the top 10 best and top 10 worst action figures in the Kenner Star Wars line. Notes before I do this, these are very biased lists, and you're gonna know that, especially when we talk about my top 10. There are figures that objectively probably should be in the top 10, that just aren't, because they're just not my personal favorites. There are some figures in my top 10 that a lot of people would probably disagree with me, with the people that collect these toys. But I have attachments to some of them, and I'll explain why they're as high as they are when we get to them. But I feel like, honestly, the bottom 10, my top 10 worst characters, could also be kind of contentious, because as you'll see as I talk about them, there's a certain line where a lot of the characters come from, which a lot of people either love the line or hate the line, so it could be very contentious depending on who you are watching this video or this episode or whatever. Without further ado, I'm going to start with my top 10 best figures in the Star Wars Kenner line. So I do actually have some honorable mentions before I get into my top 10. I also have honorable mentions for the worst list. And I just have 4 for each of them, so not that many figures, but there are some figures that I think are great, but just didn't make it into the top 10 personal favorites. So the first honorable mention is going to be Han Solo. Just a straightforward Episode 4 Star Wars, the original line, Han Solo. But specifically, I'm going to go with the second version, which is the big head version, what people like to call is the big head version. Whenever the figure was first released, they thought the head was too small, so they remade him and gave him a bigger head. And honestly, I do think it makes the figure look more like Harrison Ford. It still looks kind of silly, but that's kind of the charm of it. I think the figure looks great. It has a lot of playability. I mean, Han Solo is one of the main characters in the films, so he looks great, outfit looks great for 1977. The big head version specifically, I think, is fantastic. So, had to get an honorable mention. Next one is the start of my bias when it comes to the Cantina aliens, because we have Hammerhead, also from the original Star Wars line. I just love the Cantina aliens. You're going to hear more about them when I get into my top 10. But Hammerhead, I think, is one of the most visually striking characters, not only when it comes to the Cantina aliens, but probably just of the entire Star Wars line, including all 4 movies, or all 3 movies and the extra line at the end. It's confusing. But Hammerhead is just awesome. I think he has such a great look to him, and he's a lot taller than a lot of the other characters, so he really stands out. I just love his unique head sculpt, and I love his unique feet as well. There are very few characters that got unique feet sculpts, but he's definitely one of them, and he looks fantastic. So Hammerhead would definitely be another honorable mention for me. The next honorable mention is going to be Squidhead from the Return of the Jedi line. He's one of the glup shittos of the Kenner Star Wars line. They tend to do this a lot, where there will just be a character shown in the background background for like 3 seconds of the movie, but they look cool and they get made into characters. And that's fine, honestly, because I feel like if the character is cool and has play value and like a kid would want to play with them, then I think it's worth making a figure of them. And you'll see that as we get into my top 10. And Squidhead is no exception, man. One of the best face sculpts of the entire line. He is just so visually impressive for being an action figure from the 80s. He looks so cool. He has a great stance, especially when you hold his blaster out. And once we got into the Return of the Jedi line with the cloth capes and stuff, they really took advantage of that. And his entire outfit is pretty much cloth. And it looks incredible, honestly. One of the best looking figures of the entire run. He's kind of a glup shitto, so it's kind of hard to put him into the top 10 just on his look alone, but he is fantastic as a figure. And the last honorable mention before I get into my top 10 is one that actually was in the top 10 for a little bit, but I shuffled some of the bottom positions around and he ended up being in the honorable mentions, but he is like so close to making it in the top 10 because I love this figure. And that's going to be Bossk from the Empire Strikes Back line. He just looks so great. I love all of the Empire Strikes Back bounty hunter figures. Yes, even Dengar. I think they all are awesome. And Bossk is easily one of my favorites. I just love his outfit. It's honestly one of the more accurate outfits compared to the movie. And unlike the movie version, his action figure actually looks kind of cute. In the movie, he's kind of scary, but in the action figure representation of the character, he looks really silly, and I would love to hang with him. He just looks really great. He also, like I said, with Hammerhead, he has a great unique sculpt when it comes to his hands and his feet. He's just a very unique character. He barely made it into the top 10. I have such a soft spot for the bounty hunter figures in the Empire Strikes Back line. So he almost made it in, but I decided not to. He's still a great figure nonetheless. And so, with that, we move into our official top 10. So at number 10, for my top 10 best Kenner Star Wars figures, we have the Emperor's Royal Guard from the Return of the Jedi line. This figure is a great example of simplicity working perfectly. He is just a completely simple figure, just this really cool looking head sculpt with this long cloth robe and this staff that he holds, which is really cool. And they even went the extra mile and actually gave him a really nice looking sculpt underneath the cloth. It actually looks really nice. And overall, he's just a fantastic looking figure. Genuinely one of the best looking figures in the entire Return of the Jedi line, which is crazy because he's competing with figures like Squidhead, who have just crazy sculpts on their faces and shit. But I think he's just such a simple design, and when you compare him to his look in the movie, I think they just absolutely aced it. I think he looks fantastic, and I do think he has play value, especially because he is a troop figure. A big thing that collectors like to do when it comes to the troop figures in these lines is they like to mass collect them. So this is one of those characters like the Stormtrooper, the Snowtrooper, that people will just collect en masse, so they can have like a whole army of them. And I think an army of Imperial Guards would look absolutely fantastic. I just think they look so cool. And I think the red also makes him stand out. He's got a very vibrant red color to him. So I think he really stands out among all the other Guard characters in the line. Honestly, just a lot of the characters in the line. He just stands out over all of them. I do think he could have had a cooler weapon. A big issue with the Return of the Jedi line is a lot of the characters don't really have guns. They either have like little dinky ass sticks or they have spears, or in the case of Admiral Akbar, he has like this weird ass dildo anal bead looking thing that he holds. Like, it's really fucking weird, some of the accessories they gave the characters. And you'll see as we get into my top 10 worst, there's one character in specific that should have came with a gun that doesn't. But Imperial Guard, I'm totally fine with him having a spear. It could have been a gun, but he is a guard and he's not necessarily fighting all the time. So I think a spear is the best option there. But overall, he's a great figure. Definitely my number 10 for my favorite Star Wars figures from the Kenner line. And number 9 is actually going to be another bounty hunter figure from The Empire Strikes Back. And this one's going to be IG-88. Just an incredible looking figure, honestly. I don't think the Kenner line gets enough credit for its droids. I think the droids look incredible, and IG-88 is no exception. One of the most complicated sculpts that they ever did. And he's also very unique because not only is he a droid figure that you can use as like a fighter, like he has like a gun and he can fight and shit, but he's actually one of the rare figures that can hold 2 weapons. He actually comes with 2 weapons in the box. He has this little pistol and then he has this huge ass gun that he holds in the other hand, which you kind of can't really have him hold it all the way. It's kind of a weird inclusion, but nonetheless, he is one of the rare exceptions to the Kenner line. He comes with 2 guns, which is really really cool. And he just has a lot of play value. I think generally all of the bounty hunters are very playable. They have just so much going for them. Even if they aren't in the movie that much, they're just badass, and you know that they are bounty hunters and they do crazy shit. And that's what I like about them, is you can kind of make up your own stories whenever you're playing with them as a kid, you know? So I think he's definitely one of the best figures. It is one of the best looking bounty hunter figures in the entire Kenner run. But specifically in Empire Strikes Back, I think he's probably my favorite bounty hunter figure. With the exception of one, which you'll see later in the list. He's not in Empire Strikes Back, but if you know your bounty hunters and you know the original trilogy, you know who I'm talking about. But yeah, number 9 is going to be IG-88. Now, number 8 is one that I actually had bounced between the honorable mentions and the official list quite a bit. But I decided to put him on the official list because I honestly just think he deserves it. I think he's an incredible looking figure. And that's going to be the Snowtrooper from the Empire Strikes Back. I just think he looks incredible. I think he's a great representation of the character. And one of the more interesting things about this character is the vinyl cape that he has. You can put it on his, like, around his waist, which is how he's usually displayed, but you could also put it on his around his arms like a cape, which is kind of cool. And that's actually how I have mine displayed. I actually didn't know that his cape went around his waist until recently. So that's kind of interesting, but he kind of has that customizable feel to him where you can kind of put the cape wherever you want. But yeah, he just looks absolutely incredible for a Snowtrooper. I honestly don't think the Kenner line really missed on any of their Trooper figures. I think they did them fantastic. Mostly for the Empire side, I do like the Rebel Troop figures, but they don't nearly stand out as much as the Imperial ones. I think the Snowtrooper is a great example of just how well they did them. And another thing that makes him stand out among all the other Trooper figures is the weapon that he comes with. He comes with this huge gun. One of the only other figures I think comes with this gun is Dengar, which is interesting. They rarely ever gave characters this gun, but he has a huge weapon. And it's kind of interesting because the way he holds it, it looks kind of weird when he holds it in front of him because it's just absolutely huge. But I think it's really cool. He's one of the very few characters to come with the gun. So I think that's worth enough for someone to have bought him back in the day. I think he's a very worthy addition to your troop roster, but also just your entire collection in general. I think he's one of the best looking troop figures in the entire series. And speaking of troop figures, we have number 7, which is going to be the Imperial Stormtrooper, the standard Stormtrooper figure. It was kind of hard not to put him on here. I feel like I had to. He's just one of the most iconic action figures of all time. His design is perfect, and they never had to change it. And you'll see this going forward, that they started the figure line in 1977, and they did not drop a single character from the line until Power of the Force. These designs were so good that they lasted almost 10 years on their own. And the Stormtrooper is just one of the most impenetrable designs in the entire Kenner run. Like, he looks absolutely fantastic. Like, straight out of the screen almost. Like, for what they did back in 1977 for this figure, I generally don't think they could have improved on it. Like, he is still, to this day, one of the best Stormtrooper figures. Even looking at a lot of the modern ones that we have now, he is just a perfect representation. And the Stormtrooper blaster that he comes with is just perfect. It is just one of the best weapons in the whole Kenner run, I think. And he's just great, and he's just the poster boy for army building. People collect multiples of him like it's nobody's business. So he's one of the most popular and collected figures in the run for a reason. He's a Stormtrooper. He's the main canon fodder of the whole original trilogy. So he deserves that spot in this list at number 7, not just for being iconic, but because he is just a great addition to the line, and he looks incredible. So number 7 is going to be the Stormtrooper. Now, number 6 is kind of a controversial one, I think at least, and I'm going to explain why I have him here. I originally had him higher, but I kind of kicked some thought into my brain and decided to put him down a little bit. But at number 6, we have a Man-a-Man, from the Power of the Force line, aka The Last 17. So I'm going to talk a little bit about The Last 17 before I talk about a Man-a-Man. All of the new figures that were included in the Power of the Force line are dubbed The Last 17, because they were the last 17 original new figures that Kenner made for the Star Wars line before it ultimately was discontinued.
Coming from the farthest reaches of space are the most awe-inspiring, the most desired gifts of the galaxies. They are the Star Wars Collector's Coins. Every Star Wars action figure comes with one. Dynamic graphic front, action story back, over 60 different coins in the collection. But the best is each and every Star Wars action figure comes with one.
Every figure?
Every figure. Look for the Star Wars Collector's Coins in your neighborhood.
Some people like to call it the last 15 because of Poplu and Lumat, who are two of the Ewok figures, because they briefly appeared on Return of the Jedi cards back in 1985, I think, or 84. But it was only for a very brief time, and they mostly were bought on the Power of the Force card. So they are primarily considered to be Power of the Force last 17 figures. But those original characters were the last ones. They were the last Kenner figures ever made for the Star Wars line, and they're dubbed the last 17, and they are incredibly infamous. And opinions on these figures vary depending on who you ask. Some people love them and think they're incredible, and other people just absolutely despise them and think they suck for the most part. I'm kind of in the middle. I think some of them are great and some of them suck ass. But you'll hear my opinions on that when we talk about my top 10 worst. There's quite a few last 17 figures that pop up on there, if that gives you any hints. But I personally think a Man is one of the best figures that we ever got. There's some other great figures in the last 17, like the Lando Calrissian figure and his general's attire that looks incredible. The Imperial Gunner is another one that looks great. But I think a Man is just the cream of the crop when it comes to the last 17. He is awesome. He is another one of those Glup Shido characters where he's in the background for like 3 seconds in Jabba's palace, but I think his design and just his sheer scale alone justifies him as being a worthy inclusion on the list. I just think his design is incredible. For how little he's in the movie, I think they really did the best they could with the representation. And if I was a kid back in the 80s and I saw a Man on the shelf, I would have loved to have him. I think he is just a great addition to the bad guy roster, I think. He is just very imposing, especially because he's so large. He has these huge hands that can just swipe out the rest of your characters. And he has this really cool branch accessory with these skulls on it that I really like. He honestly could have invigorated some really cool, like, bad guy fantasy in me when I was a kid. Like, instead of having, like, Darth Vader be the bad guy or the Emperor be the bad guy, like, I could have made up my whole own lore for a Man and had him be, like, the biggest bad guy in the whole galaxy who was, like, even higher than Emperor Palpatine. Like, he has that going for him, like a character who could inspire a kid to just like make their entire lore around him and just make him like the bad guy in their playtime. And I think he's a great addition to the roster because of that. He doesn't have a lot of screen time in the movie, very little at all, but I think just the way he looks, how big he is, how scary he is, I feel like a kid could make their own lore around him and make him be like a bad guy in their own little world, and I love that about him. And that's absolutely what I would have done if I had him as a kid. But because he's part of the last 17, he commands crazy prices online. So I'm probably never going to have a Man unfortunately. There are people that make their own versions of him with their own molds and stuff, and I might get one of those at some point just because I love him and I think he's incredible and I would love to have him at some point. But as it stands, probably never going to have a Man. But number 6, I think he's incredible. Great figure overall. Number 5 is actually one of the figures that I've had quite a few of these before I got to this point, but he is one of my favorite figures that I own. And that's going to be Luke Skywalker in this Jedi Knight outfit from the Return of the Jedi line. He's pretty much the premier Luke Skywalker figure of that era. There were a few other ones from the movie that were made, but he is the definitive one. This is Luke Skywalker in his black Jedi Knight outfit with his lightsaber. He also comes with a Jabba's Palace blaster from the scene where he tries to shoot Jabba the Hutt. But he also comes with a cloth hood as well, which actually makes this figure one of the characters with the most accessories in the entire run, which is really cool. And yeah, I just absolutely love this figure. Something interesting about him, actually, is his lightsaber actually came in 2 colors. Kenner was notorious for getting Luke's lightsaber color wrong. He started out with a yellow saber for the first 2 movies, and then whenever they got to Return of the Jedi, they changed it to a blue lightsaber, because they were going off of the original Revenge of the Jedi trailer, where he had a blue one, but then they changed it, and so they changed it to a green one, like it was shown in the movie after they changed it. But that meant that both of them ended up getting out there, so it was very common for you to find the Jedi Luke with a blue saber as opposed to a green one. But they were both out there. They were both readily available. And I just think he's great. I think he's just a great representation of Jedi Luke. And because he's a Luke Skywalker figure, I think he has a lot of playability as well, obviously. He's the main character of the original trilogy. But I just think overall he is the best looking Luke Skywalker figure as well. Specifically when it comes to the head sculpt, I just think it has the best likeness to Mark Hamill as opposed to all of the other ones. And also he's just my favorite version of Luke Skywalker. Out of all of the original trilogy movies, my favorite is Jedi Knight Luke. Return of the Jedi was my favorite one when I was younger, so So he definitely drew me to Jedi Knight Luke the most. And also because this was like the only Luke figure that my dad had that he gave to me when I was young. He gave me X-Wing pilot Luke, but his X-Wing Luke was like really damaged and his head ended up coming off. So this was the only vintage Luke that I had. The one that my dad gave me, which was Jedi Knight Luke. And I just loved him. He's incredible. Mine still has the cape. He doesn't have his gun or his lightsaber anymore, which is unfortunate. But I absolutely love Jedi Knight Luke. One of my favorite Luke figures. Actually, my number 1 favorite Luke figure. He'd be my number 5 favorite Kenner Star Wars figure of all time. Number 4. Number 4 and 3 are going to be quite controversial. I think I'm just going to lump both of them in here. So number 4 is going to be Greedo from Star Wars line. And number 3 is going to be Walrus Man or Ponda Baba from the Star Wars line. Very, very controversial picks. Specifically Walrus Man. I will explain. But first I'm going to talk about Greedo. So firstly, I think a big reason why these characters are so high is because I actually own both of them. These are figures that I bought on my own. These weren't ones that were gifted to me by my dad or anything. Like, these figures were ones that I sought out and bought myself. And they hold a lot of weight for me in that regard. But also, I just think they have such unique designs when it comes to the rest of the Kenner figures. And the big reason for that is because Kenner didn't know what the characters' outfits look like whenever they made these. So they kind of just made their own. And that's why Greedo has this really weird bright green outfit and why Walrus Man has this weird bright orange outfit. They just didn't know what the characters looked like in the movie. So I guess they only had headshots or something because the outfits are completely inaccurate. But honestly, I think that adds to the charm of them. I think they look incredible as they are. Albeit a little goofy. And I think a big reason why I like them is the novelty. I just think they look a little silly, but they look unique, and I like that about them. Specifically, I actually want to talk about Greedo's head sculpt, because it is easily one of the best looking head sculpts of that entire original run. His head sculpt looks exactly like he does in the movie. And honestly, I think that makes up for the fact that his outfit isn't accurate. So, yeah. And when it comes to Walrus Man was actually the first figure from the entire Kenner series that I bought outside of the ones that I already had from my dad. I mostly got him because he was one of the older figures, and he was relatively cheap. I think I got him for like $13 back in middle school. And he still has his gun, which is awesome. He is just very, very cool. I love this figure. He also just has one of the most interesting color palettes, as I mentioned earlier, since I didn't really have any references to go off of when it came to the outfits. So he just really stands out, and he's really, really silly, and he's really stupid. And I will admit a big part of why I like him is the novelty of saying that he's one of my favorites. But because of that, it just constantly making jokes about him over the years, he's honestly grown to be one of my favorites, and I have quite a soft spot for him. He would be my personal number 1, and this list is based off of my personal opinion, but I think the top 2 are just in quality significantly better than these guys. And I think you'll understand why when I get into them. So my number 2 is going to be Darth Vader from the original Star Wars line. And honestly, I don't think this one needs much explanation. I mean, he's the original Darth Vader figure. He was the first one ever made. He's a perfect figure. He's a perfect design. Even in the 70s, the way the lightsaber, like, kind of shoots out of his hand, how it's built into his arm, I think that was a very creative decision. And it made the lightsaber harder to lose because, like I said, it goes up his arm. And 2, it just mimics the activation of the lightsaber. Like, you can have the lightsaber be up his arm, and then when you want him to fight Obi-Wan or Luke or whatever, you can have it ignite. Which I thought was really cool. I think that was a really cool gimmick, and it doubled as both being accurate to the movie and also made it harder for kids to lose the toys, lose the lightsaber accessory. So I thought that was a good idea. And I think for 1977 standards, I think he looks great. If you watch the movie and then look at how the figure looks, I mean, they really did a good job with the face sculpt, and especially the panels on his chest, I think look really cool. They're actually surprisingly accurate to the movie. The only thing that didn't age very well with this figure is the vinyl cape, because as you know, they changed from vinyl capes to cloth capes around the Return of the Jedi era. They never changed it though, and honestly, I think that's a big reason why this figure is so high up, is that it was able to withstand like 10 years without its design being changed or anything, and it still remained a popular figure because it was a great representation of Darth Vader for the toy line, and he just looks great. He's honestly one of the most iconic action figures of all time. He's up there with the Stormtrooper, he's up there with the original Luke Skywalker farm boy. He is just one of the coolest looking vintage Star Wars figures, and one of the most iconic, and also just one of the most important. I feel like there is no Star Wars line without Darth Vader. You kind of need to have a big bad guy to fight your main hero. So I think he works exceptionally well as a figure, and they just really knocked it out of the park with the original Vader, and I'm glad that they didn't change the design the whole way through. He was the exact same figure no matter what time you bought him, so fantastic figure all around. But number one, this one kind of shows my favoritism a little bit. He is not a 3 3/4 scale figure. He's not one of the little action figures. You could actually only get this figure in a playset. But I think once I explain myself a little bit, maybe you'll understand. So my number one figure from the entire Kenner Star Wars line is going to be Jabba the Hutt.
The Force is back. The rebels won't tire till they see the last of the Empire. And Kenner's there with Star Wars Return of the Jedi Collection.
The next prisoner, Gamorrean Guard.
Gladly, Jabba the Hutt.
C-3PO, Gamorrean Guard, and Jabba the Hutt playset each sold separately.
Mr. Hutt, you've captured my friend. Free him and keep me instead.
That's a sorry tale, but this tale make you sorrier.
Jabba the Hutt playset and other action figures each sold separately from Star Wars Return of the Jedi Collection from Kenner.
Like I said, you could only get him if you bought the entire playset, which included the Jabba figure, his throne, and he also came with a little action figure of Salacious B. Crumb, which is the little monkey that he has on his throne. That was the only way you could get him. But honestly, one, I think it was totally worth it, because I think the figure is incredible. And two, it's my list, I don't give a fuck. He's technically an action figure, so he's number one on my list. Jabba the Hutt's my favorite Star Wars character of all time. Just hands down, he's my favorite Star Wars character. I just love him. I loved him even more than Darth Vader when I was a kid. He just oozed evil. He was just the pinnacle of evil to me. And honestly, I think they did a great job of representing the character as a little action figure back in the 80s when the movie came out. Now, is it as detailed as the movie? No. Is it as accurate as the movie? No. But I think for an action figure, they really did a great job of this portrayal. He's made out of this, like, weird, molded, sticky plastic, and his big gimmick is when you turn his head, his tail moves. And I think just this gimmick and the way he's designed is overall probably the biggest reason that he's at number one. Because, along with some of the other vehicle designs and stuff, this Jabba the Hutt design has carried over into so many of the other Jabba the Hutt toys that we've gotten. Specifically, I want to talk about the Power of the Force 2 Jabba, which was actually the first Jabba figure that I got when I was a kid. He does the exact same thing. I think the Power of the Force 2 Jabba came out around 97, when the first special editions of the original trilogy came out, and the original came out in 83. Almost 15 years later, and when you turn his head, his tail moves, and it's like the exact same gimmick and design that the original used. It was so perfect that they didn't have to change it for like 15 years. And there are still versions of Jabba where he does that. And I think it's a really creative gimmick. It gives him some character. It brings some life into him. And I just think his design is fantastic. He didn't have to just stay looking sideways like that. You could turn his head and make him look forward. His arms were also made out of this rubbery kind of material, which was interesting. But I thought it gave the figure some nice diversity when it came to how it felt to hold in your hands. It was a very satisfying figure to have. And just when paired with the playset, I think it was perfect. He really has a presence when you put him next to the other figures. Like, he's quite large, and he's just so evil looking. And I just love Jabba the Hutt. And when it comes to all the other Jabba toys that we've gotten, I don't think they've made one better than the original Kenner one. There have been versions that are more accurate, that look more like how Jabba does in the movie, but when it comes to just sheer quality, I don't think any other Jabba has surpassed the original. Especially when it comes to toys, like, you really can't get better than the Kenner Jabba. I think he's just perfect. He's a perfect toy. And I think the throne that he comes with and just the whole set only adds bonus points. Because just as a figure alone, I think he's worth picking up. But with the whole set, like, even more, like, quadruple it. Especially when you get the Max Rebo band and the Rancor and, like, all of the weird alien figures to really amp up the Jabba's palace setting. He just gets amplified by that. And I think his design's perfect. Genuinely probably the standout character out of the entire Kenner run for me. But yeah, he would easily be my number one. But now that we've gotten done with my top 10, we now have to move on to the 10 worst, unfortunately. I think Jabba's the cream of the crop. I think those 10 figures are also great as well under him, or the 9 figures under him. Even in the honorable mentions, I thought were fantastic. But the Kenner line's not perfect. It is a great line, probably the greatest toy line ever made, one of the most important at the very least. But there's a shit ton of duds in it too. There is a lot of horrible ass toys in that line. When it comes to vehicles, playsets, and figures as well. Not all of these in my worst 10 are horrible necessarily. Like, even the ones at the top have some redeemable qualities, but there are a few main things that hold these figures back. One of them is playability. Some of these figures just I wouldn't have even touched as a kid. They would have rarely gotten any sort of playtime. They just don't come with the right accessories. They don't come with anything sometimes. They're just dumb characters. Or they're actually, this is probably one of the more important ones with a few of the other entries in here, is that they're very important characters, but the specific figure is a horrible portrayal. And you'll see that as we go. But what are my honorable mentions for the worst figures? I'm not going to spend too much time on the dishonorable mentions, I guess, if you want to call them that, for the 10 worst, because it's kind of all the same thing. The first one's Ryui's, no playability, really. He gets bonus points because he has a unique face and hand sculpt, but that's about it. Like, I wouldn't fucking touch him as a kid. Hell no. Next one's going to be Nien Nunb, who is, like, Lando's right-hand man in The Falcon and Return of the Jedi. He's actually probably the most playable one out of all of these, because he's like, if you want to have Lando fly the Falcon, and you want, like, an alternate pilot for the Falcon or whatever, like, a Nien Nunb is, like, a good, like, equivalent to Chewbacca, and I think that gives him playability, I think. But just other than that, like, that's, like, the only thing you can do with him, he is a right-hand man to Lando in the Falcon, and that is it. Nobody's taking Nien Nunb on adventures, so he's one of the weakest characters. This next one's in dishonorable mentions, I guess, just because it's really disappointing. This figure should have been great, but it just wasn't. And that's going to be the Luke Skywalker in Battle Poncho, or Endor Luke Skywalker. Endor Leia's great. She had a removable poncho, her helmet came off, she had great accessories, and then you look at the Luke version, who is from The Last 17, the Last 17 Power of the Force line. His helmet does not fucking come off. He literally cannot take his helmet off. So you can remove the poncho, and there's a great sculpt underneath there, of his, final dual outfit from Return of the Jedi, but his helmet doesn't come off. Like, he could have been a dual figure, but he isn't. And they just completely screwed over, like, so many play opportunities with him. Like, you can only use him as Endor Luke, which sucks. And the worst thing is we never got a final dual Luke. We have the final dual sculpt underneath from the poncho, but we can't use him as a final dual Luke, and we never got one. So he kind of sucks in that regard. But other than that, he's a decent looking figure. I just wish the helmet came off. And this last dishonorable mention is kind of cheating. Kinda, but I'm just gonna put every single skiff guard from Return of the Jedi and Power of the Force. So all of the skiff guards, we have Barada, who is the one from The Last 17, who's actually my favorite one, actually. I quite like Barada, actually, because he has a very bright, outfit that stands out from the other skiff guards. I just think he's my personal favorite from all of them. But all of the other ones I think are from Return of the Jedi. So there's two Klaatu's, there's two of them in different outfits. They both look like shit. Then we have Nikto, and then we have Weequay, who's actually the only one that I have. They're just fine. I don't think we needed more than one skiff guard, honestly. Like, if we had gotten just Weequay, if we had just gotten Nikto or whatever, like, I would have been fine with that. I don't think anyone would have complained. But we got 5 of them, and I just didn't think, I just don't think it was necessary. Like, they're all Glup Shiddos. Like, we don't know their names in the movie. They're just little lackeys that get thrown into the Sarlacc pit. Like, we don't care about the fucking skiff guards, you know? The only one that I like is Barada, and I think he is definitely a standout of The Last 17. But just the fact that he was the 5th skiff guard made is just ridiculous. Like, they didn't need to make that many. They're kind of boring figures. I don't think anyone was too excited to have these when they came out. So, definitely dishonorable mention to some of the weakest figures. But now, we get into the top 10, what I think are the top of the shit cake of the Kenner Star Wars line. And like I said earlier, some of these figures aren't inherently horrible. Like, there are some redeeming qualities to some of them in these lower entries. But the farther we go, the less nice things I'm going to have to say about them. So, let's get into number 10. We have EV-99, who is part of the Power of the Force line, part of The Last 17. I actually really like how this figure looks. When it comes to the way it looks, I think he's one of the coolest and most unique looking droids in the entire series. But the biggest problem with this figure is that you cannot play with him. You cannot handle this figure in any way, because the way he's built is his limbs are so thin and so brittle that if you move them, they're at risk of breaking off. His arms can break off, his legs can break off, and not to mention, the legs are made so horribly that they sometimes warp while they're in the packaging. The figure comes out of the box with fucked up legs, and you cannot get him to stand up because of that. And it sucks, because he looks absolutely fantastic. Looking at other droid figures that are similar looking to him, like 21B, 8D8, like, he's a great companion for them. He would look great alongside all those other droids. Even Death Star droid and C-3PO from the original run, like, he looks great alongside all the other droids, but all you can do is look at him. You cannot touch him. You cannot play with him. You cannot do shit with him, because his arms will fall off, and his legs will fall off, and you can't even stand him up. So he is just kind of a worthless figure in that regard, but he is nice to look at, and so that's why he's at the bottom. And it sucks that that's the case with this figure, because I really like him. At number 9, we just have one of the dumbest figures ever. We got the Rancor Keeper from Return of the Jedi. It's just a fat guy. It's just a fat guy in pants. He has kind of an interesting looking accessory, but that's about it. He looks ugly as fuck, and he's only important in like one scene in Return of the Jedi where he cries after the Rancor dies. Other than that, there is like no playability to this figure. Like, you can have this guy stand in the background while Luke's fighting the Rancor, but like, that's fucking it. Like, I wouldn't touch this guy as a kid. You know, he taking away the context of the figure, he's literally just a fat old guy in pants, in a robe or whatever. Like, he looks like fucking shit, and he has no play value. Like, he's just so lame. He is a lame ass figure. And that's pretty much all I have to say about him. He's lame. Number 8 is one that I do have kind of biased, because I know this is how he looks in the movie, but I didn't like his design in the movie, and I don't like the design of the figure because of that. And that's going to be the Cloud Car pilot from the Empire Strikes Back line. His color scheme is just ugly as shit to me. Like, the bright orange and, like, the light yellow on him, I think it looks like shit. And a big reason why I also don't like this figure very much is the accessories that he comes with. He comes with 2, so he does come with a good amount of accessories. But one of them is, like, this little weird-ass cell phone walkie-talkie thing, which could easily get lost. Like, it was so fucking little. And then the other accessory that he has is a gun, but it's just so fucking weird. Like, it looks like a hot glue gun. Like, it doesn't even look like a regular gun. Like, it is so weird looking. Like, and it looks so weird being held in his hand. I think they gave a similar gun to the AT-AT pilot as well, and the Scout Biker from the Return of the Jedi line, and it looks just as horrible with them too. But I think it looks the worst with Cloud Car pilot. I think Scout Biker looks horrible when he's holding it. Like, he doesn't even hold it straight. Like, he can't even hold the gun straight. But I just think it looks so dinky with Cloud Car pilot, and I just think he looks like shit. And that little walkie-talkie cell phone thing he has is just so weird. Like, I don't know why they packed that in with him. Like, they could have given that to all kinds of different trooper figures. Like, he's the only one that has it. It's a little strange. Number 7 is going to be FX7 from the Empire Strikes Back line, or aka the Empire's water heater, because that's what he looks like. He looks like he'd be a household appliance. He does have some redeemability in the sense that he is one of the cheapest Kenner Star Wars figures ever, which is a good thing because it gives, like, another chance to buy one of the vintage figures. I think that's a good thing. But, on the other hand, he is so cheap because nobody wants him. Nobody wants to buy FX7. Nobody cares about FX7. And it doesn't help that he has all of these immovable appendages on the bottom, which do look really cool, but a lot of the figures, a lot of the loose examples of this figure don't have all the arms. And sometimes the little, like, arm on top that extends out that kind of looks like a wrench, sometimes that's just fucking bent or it's broken off. So it's a very hard figure to find complete with all of the little accessories built into it, but it is a very cheap figure, and I think it's a great one to start someone off collecting when it comes to the whole line. He's one of the cheaper ones, so I think that is a good thing about him, and I think as a droid he looks pretty cool. He would look cool next to the other droids, but other than that, like, no playability to him, like, whatsoever. Like, no kid is gonna have FX7 be, like, the main character of their adventure. Like, he's gonna sit in the toy bin and you're not gonna touch him, you know? But I do think he's a very well-made figure. I just don't think he was a necessary one, and I doubt many kids liked playing with him. Number 6 is just full of lost potential to me, honestly. And it mostly boils down to the accessory that they gave him. So, the figure I'm talking about is a General Madine from the Return of the Jedi line. He's a general. He's actually a pretty cool general in the movie. We don't really see him in action, but he's a very commanding voice in the movie. And you'd think because he's a general, he would come with, like, some sort of weapon. But instead, they give him, like, a fucking stick that he can do PowerPoints with. You know, like, it just, I don't even really like how his figure looks. I think the color scheme looks like shit, and it really doesn't look like the guy that played him in the movie. But this staff just pisses me off so bad. Like, you're telling me a general couldn't get a gun? Like, that's kind of really fucking stupid, you know? Like, even if he doesn't have any action scenes, he's a general. Like, give him a fucking gun. But he has this weird spermy-looking PowerPoint pointer-looking thing. And it sucks. It sucks. It's horrible. He is a decent-looking figure, though, aside from that. And I do think if you wanted him to be, like, in an action scene or whatever, you could give him, like, another character's gun. Like, he has 2 hands to hold, like, 2 weapons. So that could be cool if you wanted him to do that, but he's not really, like, a fan-favorite character or anything, so I doubt that was happening very often. So yeah, he just needed a better weapon. He could have been infinitely cooler. But as it stands, General Madine, he's just one of the worst figures out of the entire, not just the Return of the Jedi line, but just one of the weakest ones in the entire series. Number 5 is a great example of an iconic character being butchered. Specifically, an iconic portrayal of an iconic character. And that's going to be Han Solo and Carbonite from The Power of the Force, The Last 17. I think the whole gimmick of him being able to come out of the Carbonite is great. And it was great to have a properly sized Carbonite block, because the Slave One vehicle from the Empire Strikes Back line did come with a Carbonite block of Han Solo, but it was small. It was small, and it was like a weird shade of black, and it didn't look all that great. So, I am glad that they made a new one that is to scale with the other characters. My problem is when you take Han Solo out of the Carbonite, and he has no fucking neck, and he looks like a blobfish. Like, aside from him being in Carbonite, you can't really do anything with the figure. Like, Han Solo figures are pretty playable, even some of the weaker ones, there's not really a weak figure of Han Solo in the line, except for this one. But this one, just, what can he do? Can he, like, not see and just, like, accidentally kill Boba Fett? Like, he really does not have a lot of play value, aside from, like, being a cool piece on the wall in the Carbonite block, you know? So, that and just the fact that his figure looks really fucking ugly makes him up this high. Like, it sucks that they ruined such an iconic portrayal of this character. Like, everyone knows that Han Solo gets thrown into Carbonite, you know? Like, they could have done so much better with him. But as it stands, I don't think it's a terrible portrayal. I just think the figure of Han Solo itself has a horrible sculpt, and it could have been better. And keeping on that same trend of iconic portrayals of iconic characters in Star Wars, we have number 4, another Last 17 figure, Luke Skywalker in Stormtrooper disguise. Again, I think when you have the helmet on him, he looks fantastic. He looks great. He's another figure where you could buy him to build up your Stormtrooper repertoire. I think that's a great thing. But you take the helmet off of him, and his head sculpt might be the worst out of all of the figures they ever made. His head sculpt is horrible. Easily the worst Luke sculpt. It looks nothing like the other Lukes. He looks... Honestly, there are some examples where he looks scary. Like, he looks horrible. And this is one of those figures where you put the helmet on him, pretend he's a Stormtrooper, and just forget that there's a head under there. It just sucks that we never got a Han Solo in Stormtrooper disguise to complete the duo of that, you know? Like, that sucks ass. We could have gotten both of them, and that could have been cool. But as it stands, it doesn't even make up for the fact that we didn't get a Han. It would be fine if the figure looked good, but he just doesn't look good. His head sculpt is horrible, and even, like, the way that the helmet looks on the figure, it just looks off compared to the other Stormtroopers. Like, if you put him in the line of regular kind of Stormtroopers, you can tell that that's not the regular Stormtrooper, you know? So that kind of sucks. He doesn't blend in very well, and his head looks like shit. So, yeah. Another dud from the Last 17, shocker. And surprisingly, number 3 is another Last 17 dud. I don't know if you can tell, I think the Last 17 is pretty fucking mediocre. Like I said, there's some great figures in it, but a lot of them aren't great. And this one's no exception. Number 3 is Anakin Skywalker. Yeah, Anakin Skywalker. This guy sucked so fucking bad that they sent him away as a freebie by mail, where you could send away for him because they assumed that nobody would want to fucking pay for him, I guess. But I guess they didn't get rid of many because eventually they just pushed him out on the Power of the Force card anyway. Don't fucking know why. He has nothing going for him. I get that he is Anakin, he's technically Darth Vader, but who was playing with this motherfucker? He is literally an old guy in a robe. He's in the movie for like 5 seconds in this outfit. And now if you go on Disney Plus or whatever streaming service you watch the movie on, he's not even in the movie anymore. They replaced him with Hayden Christensen. So he's not even in the movie anymore. And his figure sucks. He can't even hold any weapons. His face sculpt is fucking creepy as shit. Like, he has no pupils. His eyes are like this weird, dark, like, light gray, weird. It's horrible the way he looks. He has no playability. He can just stand there. You can use him as like a fucking paperweight, maybe. He'd be useful for that, probably. That's probably about it. Like, that's about as useful as he can probably get. He fucking sucks. He is a horrible figure. He looks like shit, and he has no play value. He sucks. He's horrible. Number 3, Anakin Skywalker. So how can this get worse, Lane? Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you how it can get worse. With yet another gem from the last 17. Imperial Dignitary, who I thought was going to be number 1, but you'll be... I don't even know if you'll be surprised of what's number 1 if you know anything about the Star Wars Kenner line. But Imperial Dignitary is just the biggest waste of plastic, maybe in all of history. Like, the reason that Anakin is no over Imperial Dignitary is because even though he is just some old guy in a robe and he has no play value whatsoever, he is at least Anakin Skywalker, the man who brought peace to the galaxy, who was Darth Vader at one point in time. Like, there is still some substance there a little bit. Imperial Dignitary has genuinely nothing going for him in any way, shape, or form. He is a ugly, green-looking old man in an ugly-ass purple robe, and it's just, what purpose does he serve? Why do we need a figure of Imperial Dignitary? He's in the movie for like one scene, and he doesn't even talk. He is the sole definition of glup shido. And he's not like a Man-O-Man, where a Man-O-Man could at least have cool scenarios imagined around him, where he's the big bad guy or whatever. What can you do with Imperial Dignitary? Like, I guess if you're lame, you can make him be like the Emperor's right-hand man or whatever the hell, but he doesn't even look cool. Like, he looks like fucking shit. The Emperor is an old guy in a robe with a fucking cane or whatever, and he still looks cool than Imperial Dignitary. He still looks cooler. He looks like fucking shit. Like, this figure is the sole definition of pointless. Waste of plastic, garbage, useless. He can't even hold any accessories. Like, he fucking sucks. He sucks. He's horrible. Garbage. Absolutely garbage. But number 1... Before I get into number 1 is kind of cheating, because there are technically 8 figures in number 1, maybe 7. I got rid of one that I actually kind of like, but aside from that, there are 7 figures in the number 1 slot, and if you know the line, specifically the Return of the Jedi line and Power of the Force, you know what number 1 is. Number 1 is going to be literally every fucking Ewok that Kenner made.
We are the friendly spirits from the forest grove. We're friendly spirits from the forest grove.
With the exception of Wicket. I made an exception for Wicket because he's iconic. Everybody knows Wicket, and I think they actually did a great job portraying him in the figure. I mean, he stands out because he's little. He's not as tall as the other ones, and he has the most screen time. So I think if they were to give us any Ewoks, Wicket would have been the pick, and then get rid of the other ones. Maybe Chief Chirpa, but that's about it. So if you forget the Ewoks that are in this number 1 spot, let me refresh your brain. We've got Chief Chirpa from Return of the Jedi, Logray from Return of the Jedi, we've got Lumot from Return of the Jedi / Power of the Force, and we have Papalu from Return of the Jedi / Power of the Force. Then we have Ramba, and Teebo, and Warrock. And I'm not including Wicket, because I actually quite like Wicket. But I don't even know what to fucking say about these. Like, generally, I don't know what to say about these. Do they have play value? Kinda. because they do play a part in some big action scenes in Return of the Jedi. Like, they shoot down the stormtroopers, they shoot down the AT-STs, like, they're kind of a big deal in the movie. But they take up so many character slots in Return of the Jedi and Power of the Force. Genuinely so fucking many. Just in Return of the Jedi alone, we got 6 of them. And then Paploo and Luma were on the card for a little bit before they got shifted over to Power of the Force. So there are 8 slots. There are so many characters that we could have gotten instead of these fucking teddy bears. You know, like, we could have gotten, honestly, probably the biggest snub of the entire Kenner line is fucking Grand Moff Tarkin. We didn't get a Tarkin figure. Like, that's a fucking crime. We didn't get a fucking Tarkin, but instead we got fucking Warrock, because Warrock is more important than, like, one of the main villains of the original movie. You know? Like, even some more X-Wing pilots would have been great, some more droids would have been cool, but instead we got these fucking stupid-ass fucking teddy bears, and they piss me off to no end, and because of that, they are number 1. They are so boring. And some of them command high prices, specifically Paploo and Lumat, because they're part of the last 17. And also in the mid-80s, there was an Ewoks animated show that kind of raised hype for the Ewoks and made people like them a lot. So some of these Ewoks are really pricey, and I don't know why anyone would pay money for them, because they just suck. They just suck. There are some neat ones, like Logray has, like, a cool hat. He's got, like, a cool, like, pattern on his body. He has some cool accessories and stuff. Some of them come with bows and arrows, and that's fine. But, like, they mostly just come with, like, spears and just, like, goofy-ass, like, head cloaks and shit. And when you get rid of all the accessories, they're literally just teddy bears. Like, there is no redeemable quality to the Ewoks in any way, really. Wicket gets an exception because he's kind of the main Ewok in Return of the Jedi. He gets some props there, but that's about it. So, with that being said, I think this is actually probably the longest solo episode I've ever done when it comes to Seasons 1 and Season 2 collectively for Pillowcast. But I just love Kenner Star Wars, and I love talking about it, and I think it's a very fascinating toy line. I think it was one that deserved a big episode like this. So, I'm glad to talk about it. With that being said, that is, in my opinion, what I believe to be the top 10 best and top 10 worst figures in the Kenner Star Wars line. And that's going to wrap up this episode of Pillowcast. So, thank you guys so much for listening. Every Saturday on CBO Magazine and on Shockley and Ninja, like, really means a lot that you listen, that you check us out. And yeah, make sure to check out the CBO website, actually. There's a great new article up there from Landon talking about this band called the Uncle Tims for the Creator Spotlight on CBO, which is really cool. Great article. Go check that out. Fantastic shit. And yeah, just overall, thank you for listening, for supporting CBO and Pillowcast. It's great to be hosted on here. Great shit. Next week, Landon's going to be back, hopefully. We're going to do a movie review. If that turns out. If it doesn't, I'll let you guys know. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode of Pillowcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Peace out. Stay fluffy.